There are many films about slavery told through foreign lenses. Now witness the full story from an African perspective. How did slavery in Africa begin? Who were the major players? Who resisted? Learn the answers and much more in Meltrek, Exploring the Ma'afa, Part 1, The Arrival of the Portuguese.
Peace and love, family. Welcome to another powerful discussion with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. I know you all see on the screen it said coming in 2020, but this is an old trailer. This is an old trailer. We actually dropped Meltrek episode 3 last February of 2024. And so if you head on over to meltrek365.com, family, scroll down here to films. You can click on any one of these films. It's going to route you to this page right here where you can download Meltrek episode 1, Exploring Ancient Africa, Meltrek episode 2, Exploring the Pre-Columbian Americas, and Meltrek episode 3, Exploring the Ma'afa, Part 1, The Arrival of the Portuguese. And you all say, why did Dr. Ma'at play that trailer tonight? Because you see the title, family. Tonight, we're going to be talking about slavery. We're going to be talking about slavery. Did Africans sell Africans into slavery? Do Pan-Africanists and pro-blacks, do we overlook, Africa's role in our enslavement? So, family, we're going to be unpacking all of that. But you already know that Dr. Ma'at loves to not only educate adults, but I love to educate the babies. And that is why the Meltrek series was created. Mel is short for melanin. Mel is short for melanin. Trek means journey. So we're taking you on a journey to understand, and learn about the history of melanated people through the eyes of melanated people. Ashe. So make sure that you head on over to meltrek365.com, download these films and watch them with your babies. I get phone calls all the time from parents. They say, Dr. Ma'at, they'll tell me it's a kid's film, but shoot, I learned something, right? So even as adults, right, you can learn. So I'm going to put the URL on the screen, meltrek365.com. Come over here, download these films instantly, okay, for your babies. And also, family, not only do we have films, we also have books. All right. We also have books, man. So you can come on over here, click on books. All right. We have activity books. We have story books, all sorts of stuff, family. All right. And then also, family, make sure that you head on over to consciousingenuity.org. Let me throw that URL in the chat as well. Come on now. We talk solutions on this platform, man. We talk solutions on this platform. Head on over to consciousingenuity.org, family. Okay, let me put the URL on the screen. All right, to get your child enrolled in what I call one of our youth empowerment or all of our youth empowerment programs. First up, we have Conscious Ingenuity, which is a program that utilizes science, technology, engineering, art, agriculture, and mathematics to build character, confidence, and capabilities in Black children. We also have the UACI virtual STEM camp. It's a 100% virtual STEM camp where children log on with Dr. Ma'at and my co-founder, Baba Amin, where we teach them about Black history in STEM. And they also learn AI, right? Artificial intelligence, the fundamentals of artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and even programming, right? Coding. And this past winter, we just finished up our winter cycle of the UACI STEM camp, and the children were learning Python. All right, they were learning Python for an entire week. And then lastly, family, shout out to the PLM family. Peace and love to Baba Emotep Fi to you, and also Mama Ingina. We have the Asafo training camp and the Agoji training camp. These are our all boys and all girls training camps that which focuses on character development, critical thinking skills, and also life skills, conflict resolution. And these are in-person camps offered in Baltimore, but it doesn't matter where you are, family. There are a bunch of people up and down the East Coast who come and spend time with us for about a week in Baltimore. And these camps are offered, let me see, the last Sunday of July. All right. And so we'll be opening up registration soon. So make sure that you head on over to consciousingenuity.org. Okay. And get your child enrolled in one of our youth empowerment programs. Now, let me stop sharing my screen. All right, I see the Maadian family is pulling up, man. The Maadian family is pulling up. You already know Sister Rashamel is in the building. Peace and love to you. She said, peace and much love. You know, I see JG11 said, peace, Dr. Maad. Peace and love to you. I see Tim Jones is in the building. Said, peace. Hope everyone is well mentally and physically. Ashe. It says, I see Dennis is in the building. Dennis Preggins, 862. Dennis Preggins said, much love. All right. This is Constance people coming in here because some of these names I don't know, but I do know Asafo. I see Asafo. Fi to you is in the building. Peace and love to you. Someone said, thank you for this, man. No, ain't no problem. Thank you, man. All I ask is that people just spread this information, right? That we have spread these resources that we have, you know, within our community. All right. I see Baba's in the building. He said, Ahuru Sasa, Dr. Ma'at. Yes, this needs to be addressed and clarified. He said, no excuses for the Yarugu. I see the great Dr. Craig Samuels is in the building. He said, peace, Doc to you. Bibi Fahodie, back to you. I see Miss Tiffany 410 is in the building, the best moderator on YouTube. Peace and love to you, Miss Tiffany. I see that he said somebody says, I am Hotep. Imhotep. Imhotep is in the building. There's a whole bunch of y'all coming in here. Sister Sherry Sabaz is in the building. Peace and love to you. Sister Myra Riddick is in the building. One of my supportive parents. Peace and love to you, Ron Green. I see you, man. And my audience family's pulling up. And I appreciate that. Family, we got a special guest in the building, family. This sister is a bad sister. And look, I was building with her before I went live backstage. And I had no idea that the sister did as much as she did, right? And she's a very accomplished sister, very humble sister as well. But I follow her on IG. And she puts out a lot of really good content, And there was a video she recently put out or that she published, and it was on slavery. And she talked about this whole idea of, you know, people now saying that, you know, well, the Irish were enslaved too. White people was enslaved just like y'all, you know. And so she laying that, you know, that misinformation. She slayed it with her video. And then in her video, she also talked about, you know, this notion that Africans sold Africans into slavery. So I reached out to her. I had to find out. I went in her, slid in the inbox, and I saw that she had sent me her number a while ago. And so then I just texted her and I said, look, can you come on my platform, you know, to discuss this? And she said, sure. So family, without further ado, I bring to you Sister I Am Constant Carter. Sister Carter, peace and love to you, Queen. How
What's
are you?
up, Dr. Mad? I am honored. What's happening, family? What y'all up to? How y'all doing?
Hey, look, I'm honored that you honored because you a bad sister. You were telling me all the stuff you had going on. Could you tell the people about who you are and what you do? You do so much.
Okay. I appreciate it. So I'm Constance Carter. I was sharing with Dr. Maad. Now I've been on stages with Dr. Maad through Dr. Boyce's platform at the All Black National Convention. Yes. So I don't know, maybe we were in the same place. I don't know, maybe we were on the same panel or something like that, but I remember seeing you there. And then you were a speaker at the reparations rally a few years ago when I first moved here. But I was sharing with Dr. Maad before we got on here is that I'm from California. And I just moved to the East Coast about 3 years ago. I built the largest Black-owned real estate firm in California. I'm a real estate broker. I own a mortgage company. I own a cannabis dispensary. I have several best-selling books. And I coach Black women. My passion And my purpose right now is coaching Black women from all over the world on how to make, investments and increase their net worth to 7 figures. So I do and then I also do the B1 real estate mastery training in partnership with Dr. Boyce, where I teach people how to invest in real estate and do a lot of real estate development. So I got a lot of irons in the fire, but one of the things, like you said, was the content that I put out there. I'm a history buff. I love history.
Same
I've always
here.
loved history.
Same here.
And Black history, really. I mean, that's what I care about. So, I just kind of see things I always try to bring a historical perspective when I see things. And when you talk about slavery, Dr. What I often see, and listen, let me tell you something. So on my Facebook page, and a lot of times on YouTube, I know I'm doing my job when I get the white people in my DMs cursing me out and saying some real negative things. I'm like, I'm doing my job. People were slaves too, or Black people sold they people into slavery. So I just had to address it with that particular video.
No, and I'm so glad you did. And this is a good segue into this. I want to start here with this first claim. A lot of folks will say, and I've heard white folks say this, and now I'm hearing Black folks parrot, of course, what white folks say. And so they say all societies at some point, had, some form of slavery, that was the way of the world at some point. And so, I want you to unpack that with me. This whole idea that at some point, that was the way of the world. All societies had slavery. What are your thoughts about that, Sister Constance?
So there was never a time in the history of this world that there was chattel slavery anywhere outside of the Americas. It wasn't done in Africa. It wasn't done in Greece. It wasn't done in anywhere else in the world, anywhere else in the world where they claimed to have slavery. There was no other slavery that was done like what was done to Black folks that were brought over here in the transatlantic slave trade. So throw that shit out.
Right. Absolutely. No, absolutely. And you had actually you came in strong. You hit the hammer on the nail. There were I'll say this. There was some form of slavery, servitude, and unfree labor, right? That did exist in many parts of the world, right? At various points in human history. But I do agree with you that you can't say that, all societies practice slavery in the same way. And you can't say that it was the same as U.S., European racialized chattel slavery. That just wasn't it. So I agree 1,000% with you. And so I just wanted to clean up that notion because like I said, I've heard white people say that. Oh, everywhere. I mean, it was some, everybody was, all societies. No, it was some, right? It was some, and it did exist in many parts, but it varied, right? In form, right? Some of it, it varied in form, right? Some of it was indentured servitude. Some of it was slavery, but like you said, not even chattel slavery. It wasn't even that. So they, but they used that as a means to justify what happened to us. Everybody, how it's kind of like when you catch your child doing something that they're not supposed to do and you reprimand that child and that child's like, but Ma, everybody did that, or so-and-so. And that's what I think when I hear, white folks say that, I feel like they're kind of pointing, to other people and saying, well, they it wasn't just us that was doing it. They was doing it in the Middle East. They was doing everybody, you know what I mean? And that's not true. Like you said, chattel slavery, that's an American thing. You know what I mean? Like that's an American thing, chattel slavery. And it was highly racialized and it was brutal and it was dehumanizing.
Brutal is the operative word.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And it was dehumanizing, and when I hear Black people echo those words, well, a lot of parts, Dr. Ma'at, it wasn't just, it's kind of as if we're exonerating, people who have done this, like people who have oppressed us and enslaved us. It's kind of like and I think it's a form of exoneration, you know what I mean? And Dr. Go ahead.
No, I was thinking what it does is it waters down what we've gone through, because it's like you're all lives mattering us. when you're talking about there was slavery everywhere. It's basically watering down what we've been through when you try to compare, because there is no comparison. There has not been a slavery in the same way that was as brutal, racialized, and then for life, and inherited and passed down from descendant to descendant. There was no freedom in sight for most slaves. So it was not the same. It was not, we work 7 years, then we get to assimilate into society. It was nothing like that. It was very racialized. And then they had to make us 3/5 of humans so that they can justify it. So
Absolutely.
very different.
No. I mean, I agree. I agree 1,000% with you. And I just want to drive home the point again, family, because I know some of our, family who's listening, and this, this is not the Maadian family, but some people, when they look at this video and they chop it up, and the listening comprehension doesn't really quite, but I want to say this again, y'all, what Dr. Maad is saying. And what this sister is saying, we're saying that chattel slavery is an American invention. It's an American phenomenon. It's an American thing. We are acknowledging that in some parts of the world, in a lot of parts of the world, they did have some form of, of servitude, slavery, if that's what you want to call it, or some type of system of if you want to call it unfree labor, right? Like debt bondage, captivity and war. That's different. Forced labor, it like various forms of servitude.
Call it forced labor. That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And they were present in a lot of ancient societies, Africa, Asia, Europe, in the Middle East. You know what I mean? But when we talk about chattel slavery, that is an American thing. Now let's move into this whole idea that Africans sold Africans into slavery. I've been hearing a lot of people say that, and especially when, and I told you before we even went live, I said I subscribe to, I'm a Black nationalist, I'm a Pan-Africanist, I'm pro-Black, I'm all of that, right? And I said, you probably don't subscribe to that. And I said, that's fine. And you didn't indicate whether you did or didn't. But my point of bringing that up is this. When people attack, especially Pan-Africanists, they use that. They say, well, you guys want to unite with Africans, but Dr. Maad, don't you know that the Africans participated in enslavement? They the reason you over here, and so they kind of, sister, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, I'm sorry, because I thought you was frozen.
No, I'm listening.
I told you my Wi-Fi a little janky over here. But they use that, and I've been hearing people when they want to kind of throw a jab at Pan-Africanism, they're like, why would you want to unite with those people over there? They are the descendants of the people who were responsible, for you being here. They were responsible. They played a role in our enslavement, and they sold us for trinkets. And hold on, let me be clear, Constance. I'm clear on that because I read. This is a good book right here. I recommend everybody get it. The Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1670 by Malin Nuit. And what this author does is translates a lot of writings. The Portuguese, like one thing I can say, Constance, and I know you're a history buff, so you already know this. The Europeans left great records of what they did. Okay, when you look at the books, shipping companies, insurance companies, they left great records, diaries, letters, wills, all kinds of stuff to help us understand what they did. So in this book, Malin Nuit translates a lot of the Portuguese. They writing letters from the African kings were writing letters to the Portuguese, kings and talking about it. Merchants that were involved in it, they were talking about it. And so I'm clear that the Africans did sell. And I hate saying the Africans, right? Because then we're treating it like it was a monolith back then, and it wasn't. But that the ethnicities that they were selling each other, on that continent, selling each other into slavery for trinkets. They were laughing at us, Constance. Like in this book, some of the Portuguese people were saying, "Man, I was acquiring, slaves, man, for 5 horses." I had a whole bunch of people, for horse. I would give them a horse, and they would give me a whole bunch of people, and they mirrors, rum, silk, stuff like that. So did that happen? Absolutely, it happened. But one thing I can say about Pan-Africanists, and I'm thinking about right now people like Dr. John Henry Clark, we don't shy away from African participation in enslavement. What we try to do is understand what their role was. We don't sit there and say it didn't happen. It clearly happened. The Portuguese talk about it in their records, right? That Africans on that continent did play a role, in our enslavement. And I don't think that Pan-Africans shy away from that. I think that we acknowledge it. And then, before you and I went live, we talked about historical context. So we try to put it in its proper context,
Right.
so we contextualize it. We just don't sit there and say it happened. We say it happened, we acknowledge it, and we also put it in its proper historical context. When you say that, when we discuss the role of Africans in our enslavement. So what are your thoughts about that, Sister Constant, when you hear people say things like, Africans sold each other into slavery. The Africans sold Africans. What's your thoughts on that?
So first, I think that we have to stop adopting these Eurocentric talking points, because
Facts.
these are part of the things that keep us divided as people of African descent. We do that so often. We are all of the brothers and sisters in the diaspora. We are all brothers and sisters, and I see a lot of divisions, more so lately, and it hurts my heart.
Yeah.
Because we are the same. Because united we stand, divided we fall, and that's
right.
part of that Willie Lynch syndrome that we have, right? That separation, the thing that divides us as a people. We got to stop that. Calling people tethers and, we ain't doing business with African people and we only do. They are all our brothers and sisters. And I know that some Africans don't like Americans because what they were told about us from white people. And then we don't like a lot of Africans because what we were told about them from white people. But we got to kill all that noise, and we have to start coming together, and we got to take white people out of it. We have been brainwashed to think that we are each other's enemies. So that's the first thing that we got to do, Dr. Ma'ad, is we got to stop that separation between us, because we are each other's brothers and sisters. Cut all that noise out. Number two, my thing is you got to put it into proper context.
That's right.
Just like Africans had wars, Europeans had wars too. There were wars all over the world, and prisoners of wars were treated a certain way. So I capture this tribe. This tribe is not my family. This is another ethnicity, like you said. They're from a whole different tribe. We're not the same. So we're warring against another tribe. We capture them and we sell them. Did they have an idea that they were going to go across the oceans and be sold into chattel slavery for generations and generations, and the brutality that would come up as a result? I doubt it. Would have made a difference? I don't know. But you cannot say that we knowingly sold our brothers and sisters, or our ancestors or Africans knowingly sold our brothers and sisters into slavery, knowing the brutality that was going to be on the other side. They didn't commit the brutality. The Europeans did. So we have to put it in proper context. It's not the same thing. And we have to stop the division, y'all. It starts with us. No matter if they do it or not, we have to stop that.
No, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that's a good segue into what I wanted to talk about. And I just, hold up, let me plus one this. I'm glad you drove home the point that it was no concept of Africa, Africans back then. You were saying, hold on, wait a minute. My tribe was my tribe. Your ethnicity was your ethnicity. I'm Awe. You are, I don't know, a Khan, or, you're a Khan, or you may be Yoruba, or whatever you were, but you weren't my people. We didn't look at each other like that. It was no.
Actually, I'm of the Mindi tribe. I did the African ancestry DNA.
Okay, cool. But like, so I just wanted to reiterate what you said, just in case anybody missed it. It was no concept of all of us are African, and the Europeans sailed over, and it was like, I'm selling this person and that person.
My brother, my sister, my cousin. It wasn't like that.
No, it wasn't like that at all. You know what I mean? Like you said, it was my people are my people. My people may be Awe, my people may be Bamaliki, like you said, my people may be Mende, my people may be Fawn, my people may be Yoruba. You know what I mean? My people may be Zulu. Like, just it wasn't that. Like you said, it wasn't this big monolith that everybody thinks it was. People had distinct, ethnicities, ethnic groups, and so they didn't look at that. And so I just wanted to reiterate that point that you made. And I also want to reiterate the other point that you made is that a lot of people were captured via warfare, POWs. You know what I mean? And that also happened. So let's go here. Let me share my screen really quickly. Let me share my screen. Hold on. Let me minimize this. There we go. This right here. So this was taken. Before I do that, let me go back. Let me go back. I want to show this. So there's a book, really good book. I know you all say Dr. Maya always bringing out. She always breaking books out. Well, that's the educator in me. Really good book to read. Slavery and African Ethnicities in the Americas. Okay. So this is a sister. Well, no, this is actually a white woman, but his name is Gwendolyn Hall. So slavery in African ethnicities in the Americas, restoring the links. Dr. Gwendolyn Hall. She's bad. She's bad. And I read her book. I actually read half of it. I'm still reading it. But she talked about this. Let me bring this up. Here we go. Look at this. In her chapter entitled Gold, God, Race, and Slaves, page 15, look at this. She says, the Atlantic slave trade. Oh, no, that's not it. I didn't mix up pages. Hold on. I didn't mix up pages. Hold on. Let me go to okay. This the page. That's where I want to start. Right here, family. This is where I want to start. Let me go back over here. So she says, in Africa, slavery was often a system of incorporation into the society. Hold on, Sister Constant. Hold on. Let's go. Let's start. She said it was incorporation, because we talked about earlier how chattel slavery, and there was a brother in the chat that said chattel slavery existed. He said chattel slavery existed. We said it was an American thing. There's a brother in the chat. Hold on, brother. I just saw your comment. Brother Corey, I'm not sure who he is. Corey Commercial RE. He said chattel slavery was done in other places. He said race-based chattel was specific to North America. We're going to unpack that later. But I want to go back here because I do want to talk about African slavery. Right? What we're calling African slavery. It says in Africa, slavery was often, since we're talking about Africans sold other Africans into slavery, they was already doing enslavement. And you said, well, no, they didn't really look at it like, they didn't really understand that they were selling their people, or it's not selling their people, but selling other groups of Africans into chattel slavery, because you got to understand how they thought of slavery. So I wanted to unpack that. So it says in Africa, slavery was often a system of incorporation into the society. According to Robert Harms, it says when a newly purchased slave arrived in the Bobanji village, he was either a Montambu, a purchased slave, or a Montanji, a prisoner of war. War prisoners were usually sold again to get them as far as possible from the point of capture, but purchased slaves were genuinely incorporated into the society, which would generally lead to full membership. Are you with me? Are you with me, sister? Mm-hmm. So if we keep on going, right? If we keep on going, man, I want to read the whole thing because I don't want folks to say she's skipping around. Hey, let's get the full context. So it says, full membership. While the slave status gave the dispossessed person a master to protect him from others, it provided only limited security because there was nobody to protect him from the master. The main difference between a slave and a freeman was that the freeman could not be killed at the whim of his master or at the funeral of his master. This was not only a legal distinction, but also a practice one derived from the fact that a freeman's family would protect him while a slave had nobody. A rich and a powerful slave, however, look at that, a rich and powerful slave. Sound like an oxymoron, doesn't it?
Sounds like that's what I was going to say. Sounds like an oxymoron.
Yeah. It says, however, had his own slaves to protect him, so there was little practical difference in legal rights from Look at this. So then it says the slaves defined their relationship, and I scanned it in a little crazy. The slaves defined their relationship to their master and his family, as well as their relationships to each other by employing the idiom of kinship. A slave called his master father, and look at this, and whichever of the master's wives had been chosen to take care of them called mother. Slaves of the same age slaves of the same age as well as freeborn children of the masters were called brother and sister. A young slave might call an older slave of the same master uncle, even though they both called the master father. You with me? So when people talk about, I don't think, I mean, you could correct me if I'm wrong, Constance, I don't think that in U.S. chattel slavery that they were calling the master father and the mistress mother, and I don't think it was that. You get what I'm saying? And I want to drive home the point that even though they're calling it African slavery, they called it a system of incorporation. It wasn't dehumanizing. You were incorporated into the family. You understand what I'm saying? You called the person, father, mother, their children, sister, brother, and you could be rich and you could be powerful. And at a certain point of time, you receive full membership into that particular society. What are your thoughts on that, Queen?
Dr. Ma'at, slavery in North America was not that. And we know that. These people were animals. These Europeans who had slaves were animals. They were brutal. They were murderous. They were rapers. They were just inhumane. They were non-human. And it's not the same thing. So when they try to make the comparison and they try to water down what we've gone through, that's what pisses me off. And that's the reason why I even had to bring it up, because it always comes up. Because when I talk about, just Black existence today, I like to just go back in history. This is where we were. This is what's happened. This is why we are where we are today. And often, just like I said, white people are always trying to water down our experiences, no matter if it's through slavery, if it's through our civil rights. We let everybody in the party. Everybody want to get part of the civil rights. Now we don't even have our own civil rights. So it's just a thing that's just happened over and over again. And it pisses me off to highest festivity when they try to just, water down our experiences. And that's not what it is. So we have to constantly, and then they try to tell us to forget about it or stop talking about it. But we have to constantly remind people that the reasons why we're here, where we are today, is because what's happened in the past. So, and we have to tell the truth about it, because that's what they're doing. They're not telling the truth. They're lying. We know it. Just blatantly, they telling us not to believe what our own eyes see as it is. And they're trying to rewrite history. And so I think it's just important that we tell the truth, that we are the truth tellers, because them motherfuckers ain't gonna tell the truth. And I'm sorry to your audience. I curse, I love the Lord, but I will curse too. So I'm just saying they don't tell the truth. And that's what pisses me off.
No, and I mean, absolutely. And I just want to +2+1 what you're saying. We got to tell the story. They're gonna, it's an African proverb. What did it say? Until the lion begins to write, the story will always glorify the hunter. So we gotta sit back and not sit back. We had to tell the story. We can't sit back. That's what I meant to say. We can't sit back and allow other people to tell our story. We have to tell it. And that's what the Meltrek Project is all about. Us telling our story and teaching it to our babies, right? Like teaching it to our babies, us telling our story, even the way that you do it. And I love the way you do it. It's masterful. The way you do it on Instagram, the videos that you create, telling our story. And I love your videos. One, the images are great, but the information is on point. It's not like when I watch your videos that I'm like, she got this wrong. I'm like, no, she actually was on point, with this. Someone brought up the Dahomey Kingdom and said they fought back against the crown when the crown of England tried to end the transatlantic slave trade. I'm going to get to the Dahomey, and I'm glad that you brought that up, family. I'm glad that you brought that up. Let's get back here though. Let's get back here. I want to show you this too. And this kind of drives home one of the points that she made. It says during the first years of slavery, no, I don't want to get there. This is what I want to highlight on this page. It says some scholars claim that before the Portuguese arrived, we're talking about in 1441, there was no word for slave in the Bantu languages of West Central Africa. Okay, so it says Costa y Silva, I butcher names. It says describes a mild form of slavery. The children, nieces, and nephews of these quote unquote slaves were absorbed into society. All right, it was widely accepted throughout much of Africa over the centuries that children of slaves were free. Sister Constance, that wasn't the case with us over here in America. It was perpetual, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was forever. So it says distinctions were made between slaves kept in Africa and those collected for shipment into the Atlantic slave trade. They were sometimes referred to by a different name. The military use of slaves and those use of female slaves as concubines, and sometimes co-wives and mothers of the children of elite men, continue to allow for significant upward mobility for some slaves and their descendants in Africa. Some of them rose to high ranks in society. These patterns existed long before the Atlantic slave trade began and continue well into the modern period. But let's keep going. Let's keep going because you mentioned Dahomey. So it says in Dahomean tradition, one of the fundamental laws attributed to the founder king Wegbakcha, I probably butchered it, in the 17th century prohibited the sale of slaves of anyone born within the kingdom, contravention being a capital offense. In principle, this rule was enforced so rigorously as to prohibit the sale even of female captives who became pregnant while in transit to Dahomey. So I do understand why you brought up Dahomey. I do understand that, but I do want you to understand that around that time in the 17th century, at one point, they prohibited the sale because they sold their own people. They prohibited the sale of slaves of anyone born within the kingdom, contravention being a capital offense. In principle, this rule was enforced so rigorously as to prohibit the sale of even female captives who became pregnant while in transit to Dahomey. So a lot of people, when we talk about African enslavement, Sister Constance, they bring up Dahomey. Well, y'all know Dahomeys, they was participating, they were slave captures, they were selling, but they never tell this part of it. What are your thoughts when you hear that, when they bring up examples like Dahomey? What do you think about that?
Of course, again, that's another Eurocentric talking point to include or to divide us as a people. And I think we just really need to get back. Again, the reason why I tell my stories is because they are lying. And we have to get back to where we exhibit unity across the diaspora. We all Black. I don't care if you say, I Dominican, I know Black, you Black too. You know, we all come from the same place, and we have to just stop the separation. We have to stop the excuses. We got to stop fighting against each other because that's what they want, y'all. That's what they want. That's the reason why when you look at what's going on TV, you know, you see, you know, they only show Black people in a negative light. So when you see Black people across the ocean on TV, on these reality shows, they show us in a negative light so that when they come over here, there will be this image of Black people. They show them in a negative light, and we've adopted that. And we should know by now because we've already said all of those negative things about ourselves. And I think we're starting to have an awakening about who we really are because we've adopted their talking points about who we are. You got to think about this, Dr. Ma'a. I remember when I was growing up, my parents are from the South, right? And they were, you know, my mom's light skin, my dad's dark skin, but they were very on that light skin, dark skin type conversation in my house growing up, or saying Black jokes and things like that. They thought was funny because that was what was taught to them. And they, you know, they would repeat that shit that they would hear from them white people. My mom picked cotton, you know what I'm saying? But my mom didn't have to really pick cotton because she was light skinned. All her dark skinned brothers was out in the field. That was that separation. And so then therefore that was also ingrained. And so at some point we had to stop that. That's part of the brainwashing is what I'm saying of these white people that Black people have adopted. And what I'm saying is across the diaspora, the things that are the lies that are told about who we are, that's keeping up this separation, we have to wipe it out our conversation. And we just got to start being Black and think one, or Pan-Africanist, or whatever you call it. But we just have to be one as people of African descent. I just think that we got to stop the separation, and we got to stop believing the lies that white folks tell us, they say about us. Stop it.
No, I agree. And it's a sister. I don't know if it's really a sister. It could be a guy, because like some people just, just throw handles. American Lady 738. You're saying that Pan-Africans love slave owners and slave traders as long as they have dark skin. I don't know if you're trolling, or if you're just slow. I mean, I don't know what, I don't really know what to say. I don't really know, because the stuff that you're saying,
it's always trolls on these things.
Yeah,
girl.
it's just utterly ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. Yeah, I just always drop the link in the chat. I always tell them pull up. I always tell folks pull up. I like to intellectually spar. So I am lady. I just dropped the link in the chat. You can come pull up. Come pull up, and yeah, come pull up. Come pull up. And so I do. Yeah, they never do. She ain't gonna click the link. She came in trolling, or he came in trolling. But another thing, warfare. You talked about warfare, and this supports what you were saying earlier. It says warfare in Africa is difficult to disaggregate from the escalating Atlantic slave trade. Although it was often propelled by internal considerations, it became increasingly provoked, inspired, greased, and supported by the European demand for slaves in the Americas, as the frontiers for the capture, kidnapping, and sale of Africans supplying the Atlantic slave trade expanded and moved inland. So I don't think a lot of people understand that. You know what I mean? That they were like, really, you had these internal forces, fueling warfare in Africa, with the sole aim to, get more slaves, for the Americas. And I want to end on this right here. At one point in Africa, it says there was no visible slave trade in Aja or Yoruba lands of the slave coast when the Europeans first visited there. It says they described markets, right? They described markets where many goods were bought, right? And it says they looked hard for and inquired about slave markets, but were told that some markets only existed 800 miles inland. It says this was, of course, not true, and might have been a means to encourage Portuguese to move on. All right. So I do want our people to walk away, with understanding, again, pro-blacks, Pan-Africanists, Black historians, Black nationalists, don't run away from that, the whole claim that Africans participated, right, in the enslavement, right, in the capture, right, in enslavement, the capture, the selling, and enslavement of other like Africans, right? But we have to put things in its proper historical context, and that is what's missing. People like to throw out things that happen, but they don't contextualize it, right, at all. And context is key. And remember, we used to hear that concept when we were younger. Context is key. Context is key. It really is. It's not an excuse. It is, hey, I need to understand what's happening. What were the dynamics that were shaping, this event? For example, how like, okay, how we say, when I was coming up, I remember hearing things like, this little girl is fast. She's fast, for her age. She's fast, or she's promiscuous. Or even boys, he's promiscuous. He's fast. But, and I used to be one of those people, very judgmental in my teens, 20s, early 30s. Look at what's going on. So I could diagnose the behavior and tell you what it is, but I didn't get to the root of it. What was happening? Why is this person the way they are? Even little kids who are angry. This person is so angry. But let's why? What happened? What did this person, what was his or her lived experiences that shaped him or her to be who they are? It's the same thing that when you go back in history and you try to understand, when you go back and you learn history, while you're learning history, you got to also think like that. You got to apply that same type of thinking when you're studying history. Okay, these events happen. What is the why behind it? What was going on? What was the culture? You understand? What was the culture? What was the economic system? What was happening? What was the politics at that time that caused this to happen? A lot of people don't answer these questions. They just grab some historical facts and say, Dr. Mott, this happened. And I'm looking back and, oh, that happened. Okay. But what was going on in that time period, during which this happened? So I just wanted to say that because people will pick out, and I'm looking in the chat, the homie people, they did it, but you didn't know that at one point that the homie people said, nah, they had a rule that they reinforced where they weren't selling their people into slavery, right? What happened? You understand what I'm saying? And so I think we just had to apply that mindset when we study history. And Constance, a lot of people don't. They just go back and they pull historical facts and they push it out into the world without any, context. And so what are your thoughts about that? What's your thought about that? Your thoughts about that?
I say, let them white people keep telling them lies. And I think we need to focus Black folks on practicing collective economics, working with each other, building our communities, and stop with the division. That's the main thing. They said in the year 2053, Black median wealth was going to be a 0. And when you look at our communities, everything statistically that's bad, we're on the top, and everything that's good, that we're on the bottom. But I think that we're on the cusp of a great awakening for Black people, and that we need to really focus on what we can do and build together rather than what separates us and tears us apart. So I say, Black folks, focus on doing business with each other, focus on working together, focus on building together. That's where we need to be. And of course, we need to look at history, but let's focus on how we can build up our communities together and stop the division, stop the divisive talk. That's what I say.
Absolutely. And Third Option Party says Pan-Africans are some kind of whimsy, especially if you think these tribes didn't kill, rape, and brutalize the opposing tribes they purposely went to capture. See, this is what I mean. Let me show you this. See, let me pull up something really quickly. So the definition of listening comprehension, all right, it is the ability to understand and process spoken language, going beyond just hearing to grasping meaning, context, and intent through active engagement, attention, and interpretation of sounds, words, and structure, crucial for communication and learning. We clearly acknowledge that. We acknowledge that happened. I don't know. Again, if there's a listening, it seems like there's a listening comprehension issue, because we clearly talked about that did happen. I even read something about warfare, right? Like it happened. They were warring, you know what I mean, with each other and capturing, and they were doing all kinds of stuff. So no one ever said that this wasn't happening. And so that's why I think it was definitely a listening comprehension issue. And sometimes, and then sometimes
she brought up the definition, y'all.
Listening comprehension, man. Constance, I listen to folks, and I'm like, Dad, they try to argue. They come on and they argue with you, and you're like, I didn't say that. Like, that's not. You're arguing something
was that the Trump supporter who said that? Who was that said that?
It probably was.
Was that the American lady with the
no,
okay.
It wasn't the American lady. Okay. It wasn't, but I dropped the link in the chat. So if you all want to come and pull up, if you feel like we're saying something in error, I love all the smoke. I do. I love the intellectually spar.
Well, I will say this, that I don't know if you know, but the average Trump supporter has the comprehension level of a third grader. So perhaps if they didn't comprehend, perhaps they were in that percentage of Trump supporters that we know that don't really comprehend really well. And you can't really blame them.
Yeah, but then it's sad when people have a listening comprehension, when they have a comprehension problem, they don't know it. Like some people don't know it. You're sitting there, you're like, man, I didn't even say that. That's not, that's not what I said. You're arguing something that I did not say, right. See if you was arguing against something I actually said. But
I
they,
love it.
man, yeah, man. So I see Trevor. Hold on, Trevor. Trevor, cut your camera on. Or can you cut it on? Or you just want to cut your audio on?
What's up, Trevor?
Trevor, you there?
Now, if you don't get on the camera. Trevor, where you at?
Trevor, where you at, Trevor? Pull up Trevor on us. Where you at, Trevor? Trevor came in. Oh, there he is. Trevor.
Yeah,
Trevor.
you hear me now?
Yeah, we hear you, brother. Go on and shoot. What's your thoughts, man? Go ahead and build.
Well, so yeah, no, I understand 100%, you know, the this concept of like Pan-Africanism and how it's been pretty essential to like the Black radical tradition, and we've had some of our very prominent Black leaders subscribe to the idea of Pan-Africanism. So I get it. The only issue that I find a lot of times is that oftentimes, and not saying anybody on this panel, but oftentimes people try to absolve Africa of any wrongdoing when it came to the transatlantic slave trade. And the transatlantic slave trade was Western countries, but also, as you mentioned, and you know, I wrote in the chat, the Dahomey and the Oyo, who were so involved that once the transatlantic slave trade was supposed to stop, they wanted to continue it because it was propping up their economic. It was an economic driver for them. And I think we don't really try and find context for anyone in America or any, you know, Southerner or Confederate sympathizer when it comes to what they did to Black people. So I wouldn't try and find a context or try to, you know, justify any actions. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but I wouldn't try and justify the actions of the Oyo or the Dahomey. You know, because
I didn't justify anything. I just read the history. Go ahead.
Yeah. No. I'm just saying, you know, so I don't think there's any amount of context that can really, you know, absolve whether it's a Confederate in the South or whether it's an African on the west coast of Africa.
Who's absolving? Who's absolving, sir?
Well, so I know, and earlier in the podcast, it was like, well, in America, it wasn't that, or in West Africa, it wasn't as brutal as it was in America. And
no, no, that's not what was said, sir.
Okay, well, maybe I misheard. So
what, let me explain what was said. And Constance, if you want to jump in, or, you know, so what we were saying, and if you go back and listen to it, we were talking about forms of slavery, right? Like throughout the world, because there was a claim. So there's a claim on the internet that, you know, slavery at one point was the way of the world. You know, people put that out there, that slavery at one point was the way of the world. Everybody had slavery. And so the first thing that she and I addressed was that false claim that slavery was the way of the world. No, I mean, many parts of the world had systems of free labor, right? And you know, some people had indentured servitude, some people had slavery, if that's what you want to call it, and then you had U.S. chattel slavery, right? And so we addressed that claim, and then we moved from that to talking about African slavery, or what people think was, you know, what they call African slavery, and we defined what that was. At no point did anyone try to absorb Africans for their participation. We actually acknowledged it, and then we talked about how Africans viewed slavery, if that's what you want to call it, on the continent. Like, how did they practice slavery? I don't even like calling it African slavery because that's not what it was. But we talked about that. So no one tried to absorb. I'm trying to understand, where did you get that from?
So yeah, I think too, if I can add to that, because she absolutely didn't absolve it. She actually acknowledged it. But it sounds like what you're trying to do, Trevor, is you're trying to compare them selling of the slaves in comparison to what actually happened when they got to North America. And they are not the same. It's very inconsequential. So when you say, oh, they fought to keep slavery, okay, you may be right, because I don't know, I didn't read the book. However, what they weren't fighting for is to keep their people, or keep people as lifelong descendant chattel slavery in the same brutality that was happening in North America. They were fighting for their economy. It wasn't the same. So my thing is, when you try to conflate it and make it seem like it's their selling of slaves is the same as the brutalization of slavery that happened in North America, I think that's very different.
Well, Well, I think a Confederate sympathizer in the South could potentially make the same argument that their entire motivation for enslaving people was was the
Free
economy.
labor. Yeah, it was the
Yeah,
economy.
free labor
Yeah.
to generate income and we know that slavery at some point in this 19th and 18th centuries, the aggregate of slaves were 75% of the GDP, right? So like we understand how big of a market
It's business. Yeah,
it
it's
was. It was a
business.
huge business.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
right. So yeah. So I mean, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander in the sense that, like, if we're not excusing Confederates who wanted African people to work for free in the South, we can't excuse, and I'm not saying, I'm just using excuse because I don't, for lack of a better term, the Dahomey and the Oyo, I don't really think they cared what happened to those people. Like they weren't like checking on them, trying to figure out, hey, are they
How are they
okay?
going? How are they going to check on them? Go ahead.
Well, there were boats at that time. There were ships. The
So
Dahomey
the
was,
Africa, so the Dahomey people had a bunch of ships and could come over here and check on us, sir.
the Dahomey was one of the most powerful kingdoms in West Africa. They had shipping and trading relationships with a lot of the Western countries, England, the Portuguese. And in fact, the ships that there was a West African squadron that the crown had to put off the coast of West Africa to prevent African ships or ships with Africans from going, completing that journey to the Americas with those illegal enslaved people after the transatlantic slave trade had ended. So this is how prolific slavery was, not just in America and amongst the Europeans, but also amongst these kingdoms in West Africa.
Okay, hold on, real quick, Trevor, because I had Brother Ankh on here, sure. and he did a lot of study. You talk about the Dahomey and the slavery. So Brother Ankh, Brother Trevor, he came on and he said, well, it's two things I hear. And Trevor, you can correct me if I misrepresented anything that you said or were trying to convey. The first thing he said, Brother Ankh, is the Dahomey people fought to keep the transatlantic slave going. When the crown tried to stop it, they wanted to keep it going. And so I just want you to address that point first, Brother Ankh, and then I'm going to move into his second point. We can move into a second point, which was, well, I don't think the Dahomey people cared what happened to Africans after they sold them, because once they sold them, they didn't come check on us, and they had the ships, they had the means to come over here and check on us. So could you talk about those 2 points, Brother Ankh?
I think, and how you two ladies doing? Dr. Miata and what's the sister name?
Sister Constance. Sister Constance.
Sister Constance, how you doing? How you feeling?
Hello. Good, great.
And Brother Trevor, right? Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes.
So you can have a fact, but take it completely out of context. So, and which is crazy work right there. And that's something you should never do. So historically, maybe they wanted to keep it going because at that point, it's the only game in town. It's the only business. And I can understand that. But the whole context of it was they was involved in a global network of slavery. It is what it is. Like at that point, ain't no choice. Okay, point blank. The extraordinarily crazy claim you made was they didn't care about where we went and didn't come get us is ridiculous. Like they had world maps, like they even remotely knew where we was going at to go get anybody. Is crazy to me. So they was a continental people. They wasn't a global people at that time. The Europeans had gotten global based off of the sale, based off of certain technology, based off certain maps. So to expect anybody, any African nation to go get somebody is the most ridiculous thing. It's borderline hating at the end of the day. That means you really don't care about making sure facts are in proper context. Like, that's crazy. That's like saying, somebody got locked up, we ain't gonna break them out of prison. Like, really? Somewhere with the feds, somewhere way over there, you don't even know where they at. It's too much to ask out of that. If you sat down with yourself and thought about that, and put everything together, you would recognize that they didn't know where they was taking us at, bro. They just didn't. and all they knew was the Portuguese, based off of the work. Where's that work at, Doctor?
Oh,
Yeah,
you know I got it. You know I got it.
yeah,
Right here. You know I
yeah.
got it.
Based off this work, the actually the Africans kind of beat them down and made them plug into their markets. Right now, we got to talk about what was slavery in African markets, which is a whole different thing. So that those African nations didn't have a penal system, they didn't have jails. Whether we want to believe it or not, African people have committed crimes in their community since the beginning, like all people are. And so there was no place to put them. They had wars like nations, like Germany and Japan. We had wars too. We were illiterate war people at times. What we need to do, we had empires, all that. So we had a market, right? That had commerce, trade, slavery, and all that. So that's not a big deal. They made the Portuguese tap into that after the Portuguese tried to use unsuccessful trade raiding based off of the defense of these different. They defended their nation like they're supposed to. They had a navy. They had all these things in tow. They had a riverboat system. Okay, they had all that. So you kind of like acting like they just a bunch of dumb idiots and just wouldn't come get us. And that's just ridiculous, man. Like, you gotta stop. You can't do that.
I want to know, like, okay, so say the homie got on a boat and they came to America to come get us. What would have happened to them?
Yeah,
They'd been able to check on us and say, okay, y'all good, we can go back home. Like, whoa, what?
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, so my point in saying that the Dahomey tribe, I don't think, because that was a counterpoint to a point that Dr. Mott made about the Dahomey tribe potentially not knowing the fate of the people that they were selling. And my counterpoint to that was that I believe that the Dahomey did not care about the ultimate end, the ultimate destination for the people that they were selling. That's evidenced by not wanting to cooperate once they found out that the transatlantic slave trade was outlawed. They didn't want to cooperate. In fact, they circumvented any protections that were put in place to make sure that the transatlantic slave trade didn't continue. There was a book written by a white person. I know you guys said earlier in the podcast that these British people and these Europeans documented very well. There was a book written by a British slave trader called his name was Robert Norris. It was written in like 1789, Memoirs of the Reign of one of the Kings of Dahomey, where he said that the Dahomey kingdom wasn't chaotic or primitive. It was structured and state capable. And then, in fact, if the captives who they mainly got by war and conquest weren't sold in the Atlantic slave trade, they would be killed or sacrificed. So that's my belief, that the Dahomey didn't care about what happened to these people that they sold, that they captured first by conquest and then sold to these people for whatever material gain or monetary gain that they were able to benefit from.
Yeah, we never talked about whether people cared or didn't care. That was something that you came into. You talked about that. We were comparing and we were actually juxtaposing African slavery and European slavery. We never went into because what they.
Are you saying that slavery
I never said that. Let me say what I said. I put up this book right here, Slavery and African Ethnicities in the Americas. And I talked about, and you can go back to the tape, like you can roll it back. But I talked about what they thought African slavery was, and it wasn't really a system of slavery. It really was a system of incorporation. And I broke all of that down. So we already kind of addressed that. But Trevor, it's kind of like I don't know. Can I ask you a question, Trevor? What is your ethnicity?
I'm Black American.
Oh, you're Black American. Okay. Yeah. And in the chat, you put this right here. You said, knowing the history of the world isn't Eurocentric. Who made that claim? It's kind of like you trying to who made that claim? Like who said
I'll
that?
Tell you. Yeah, I'll answer your question. Sure. So the claim was that people who point out the history that is very well documented, that these African kingdoms willingly sold Africans into slavery. People that point that out is somehow brainwashed or taking white people's talking points. That's ridiculous. I don't need a white person. In fact, some of the most prominent historians that I listen to are Black. I don't even know a white historian who even delves into the topics that I'm interested in. So I think it's just I disagree with that.
Okay, so I think I know Sister Constance made that that statement. Sister Constance, could you talk to him about what you meant by that?
So what I was saying is that we have to stop adopting these talking points of Europeans in how we have division amongst Black people in general across the diaspora. That's what I'm saying. So I don't remember the other part that he was talking about, but that was early on.
Yeah, we talked about that early on, Trevor. So I was just trying to.
So, but I don't think European history or acknowledging European history is in any way wrong. I'm saying when you try to water down a Black African experience by comparing the two, it's totally two different things. And that's what you've tried to do when you compare Africans selling slaves to what happened when we got over here. Those are two different things. And so when you try to compare the two to try to water down the experience of Africans when they were in America, I think that's where there's a miss for me. Mm-hmm. It's not the same.
I don't think they're two different things. They were both a part of the same system. The selling, you wouldn't have the Africans in America if you didn't have someone selling them in the first place. It's part of one continuous.
Again, we're talking about prisoners of war. We're talking about.
If I could just finish, it's one continuum. So there was a continuous process, right? The same thing for any transaction. There isn't any supply if there's no demand, right? And so it's not two different. It's one and the same.
No, they're not, Trevor.
Can I just
go, Brother Unc. You want to address them? Go ahead.
So, no scholar that you have would say that the slavery that occurred in Africa was the same as chattel slavery. There's a reason for the word chattel slavery, bro. And either you just want to do it on purpose or trying to sound smarter than everybody else for no apparent reason. Like, I agreed to your initial points. I just said the way you introduced it wasn't like it actually occurred. Okay, like you don't know what was on their minds or what they cared about. You know what I'm saying? That's crazy to say they didn't care about us. They didn't come get us. Like, you should know, since you claim to read scholarly works, that that's not even part of the discussion on whether they cared or what they was thinking or was it business. But no scholar actually says that the transcontinental global trade was the same thing as, quote unquote, the slavery that occurred in the African slave markets. Different rules, different regulations. First of all, you wasn't a slave for the rest of your damn life, and your kids wasn't enslaved for the rest of their life, and they kids and they kids and they kids and they kids. That's a distinct difference right there. I'll say it again for those who are just very slow and playing around with us. I'm saying that Europeans would enslave your mother and your father. Their kids would be slaves. Their kids' kids would be slaves for daggone 400 years. Go get me the record of that being in Africa. I'll just stand on that point alone.
We talked about that earlier. We talked about that earlier. Like, I brought up I actually showed this book right here by Dr. Gwendolyn Hall, and broke down that whole idea. So I don't. He's trying to say it's the same thing.
It's not the same. It's not the same as prisoners of war. That's totally different.
Listen, I'm not a slave denial. Hold on. Let me speak, bro. That's how you
go ahead, bro. I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Now let me talk. Right. So you playing. That is not the same thing. Now, I would agree that slavery of anybody is just wrong. So I'm not sitting there saying that was right or wrong. So my question to you is, what do you do with the criminals if you don't have a penal system? Europeans had penal system, meaning if you committed a crime, they could just lock you up. So I'm gonna ask you, what should I do with my prisoners of war and my criminals? If I'm in Africa, if I'm understanding African culture, custom and traditions, and the way they handle that, I'm asking you, what would you do, Mr. Trevor?
Yeah. So I think what a lot of people misunderstand about the Dahomey, they were very intentional in their participation, when it came to their participation in the transatlantic slave trade, a lot of the quote unquote wars that they initiated was in order to capture people to keep their economy running on the selling of enslaved people. So it wasn't just that, you know, a war where they had a disagreement about something and people just
I apologize, Trevor. I was just talking about African slavery in general. I'm not going to stay on the Dahomey. I'm just talking about
I don't understand what
slavery, and that there was slavery.
We're talking about the transatlantic slave trade.
Okay, but okay. So if we're talking about the transcontinental slave trade, then why just stay stuck on the Dahomey? We're talking about generally speaking. Hold on. I want to make sure, because you kind of
you're cutting me off first of all, and
no, I didn't know, because I was trying to let you know that I'm talking about the transcontinental slave trade.
Okay, and so am I.
African nation. Okay,
so just let me finish. So the Dahomey kingdom was one of the biggest players in the transatlantic slave trade. Anyone that has done a modicum of research on the transatlantic slave trade in West Africa's involvement knows this. And my point was that, you know, man, you know, I don't cut people off, man. It's kind of rude to cut me off. I'm in the middle of a sentence. Now I can't even go ahead, man. You got it.
No, go ahead. Rethink your thoughts, brother. I just wanted to, okay, I apologize for cutting you off. Go ahead, brother. Catch it. You can catch your thoughts. If it was that serious, you ain't forget about it. Go ahead.
Nah, man, you go ahead, man.
When you catch your thought, you can cut me off. That way we even up. So my point is, I'm not just talking about the Dahomey, whether they the largest players or not. Okay, we can talk about Nzinga, King Alfonso. They was the first players. You ain't get much bigger than them.
Okay, I remember what I was going to say.
Okay,
so,
go ahead, brother.
So basically, these wars that were started by a lot of these kingdoms that benefited economically from selling and trading enslaved people, they were started with the intention to capture and trade people. They weren't started for disagreements between a chieftain selling his daughter but not receiving however much the dowry. It wasn't for those types of things. They were intentionally doing it in order to continue to be active in the transatlantic slave trade.
So I would like to introduce to the audience something that most people forget. They actually act like that Queen Nzinga, King Alfonso, and the Dahomey was sitting in Europe when they decided to figure out how they was going to go get some Negroes. They actually wasn't. At no point was they over there in the planning stage, putting it together to go get African people. So let's establish that Europeans started that. Europeans started the transcontinental global slave trade. And I want to add this piece to it before I get into my explanation. The slave trade was so serious and brought so much money that it produced a global economy that, guess what, that fueled the industrial age, the industrial age 1, the industrial age 2. Do you know how significant the industrial ages are to planet Earth? And do you know what labor fueled that? It was slavery. It brought them abundance of money at the point where they was like, man, we don't need slavery no more. We need them people to start working in the factories that we building. School systems was set around that, training you to work in a factory. I mean, do we really understand a cohesive story and understand that? So it's the fuel for the global economy, and Europeans started that. So now we got that straight. So I don't want to hear I don't want to hear that. Now let's get to the Africans' role in slavery.
Let's get to it.
Let's get to it. Okay, they already had a system in place. But I can tell you what happened. So if I'm on a corner and I sell weed, selling weed, right, sometimes can be harmful. You can get killed doing it, you can get robbed, but it ain't like selling heroin and cocaine.
Nope.
But if I got a network already set up for selling marijuana and some wild guys come in, right, that's already got a motive to send me globally come in, it's an easy plug and play. All they got to do is through lie, deceit, cheating, and all thing they did after we beat them, because they was coming in trying to raid, and we beat them at that. We stopped them from that. So hold on.
I don't know, Trevor. Are you familiar with the raiding first? Do you understand that they came in kidnapping and raiding before they actually started buying? Are you familiar with that, Trevor? I just wanted to stop you right there, because I don't know if that's familiar.
That's a good place.
Trevor.
Yeah.
So talk about it then, Trevor. You say you're familiar. So go
Yeah.
ahead. So talk about
Yeah.
the kidnapping and the raiding that you're familiar
Yeah.
with on the continent. Go ahead. You have the floor.
So what I'm familiar with is that initially Europeans were not going in anywhere further than the coast of Africa.
That's not true.
Europeans were too scared to go inland Africa because the Africans would they didn't want those types of problems. From what I understand and what I've read, the kidnappings, etc., didn't start until later 19th century, maybe or maybe later to mid 19th century, maybe a little earlier 19th century.
Trevor, that's not true. That's not true, brother. But go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, that's not true.
So the reason why how the Dahomey and the Oyo kingdoms got so powerful is because they were able to engage with the Europeans in this trade early on. This is how they came to have agreements and contracts and treaties and trade for all these different things. Because if the Europeans could just go and kidnap people, why would they need any agreements with the Dahomey or the Oyo? They wouldn't need those agreements. They needed the agreements because they weren't going inland Africa. They were,
and they say it in this book. So this book right here, Trevor, is called "The Portuguese in West Africa, 1415 to 1670." It was translated by there it is, Malin Nuit or Nuit. And so the Portuguese. So what this author did was take the Portuguese writings, their diaries, their letters, and he or she translated it. Okay, and so the Portuguese themselves tell you that they were raiding villages initially. They were raiding. They were also kidnapping. A few of them talked about how sometimes they would see an African woman getting water with her children, and they said that they would purposely run over to her and grab her child. And they said they knew her maternal instincts would kick in, and so she would run, of course, behind her child trying to get it, but they were trying to capture her. And so they would do stuff like that. And then a couple of them said, man, they got tired of going in and raiding these villages because they were always getting hit with poisonous arrows. So I think, Trevor, you should probably invest in this book so you can read what the Portuguese said from their own mouths. They were raiding and they were kidnapping. They were raiding and kidnapping. They were going in the villages. Even if you go to Chat GPT, I'm pretty sure Chat could tell you that if you don't feel like reading the book. But they were actually raiding and kidnapping. So I don't know. And they were doing that 19th century. No, they were doing that when they first got over there, in the early 1400s. They were doing that.
Can I introduce a source?
Yeah, you go ahead. Go ahead, brother.
And that's a great point, Doc. Let's deal with a source: local African responses to the early slave trade in Upper Guinea, 16th to 17th century. The abstract: when the Portuguese mariners reached the Senegambie coast shortly before 1450, they quickly engaged in taking numbers of captives back to Lisbon. Okay? I ain't gonna read you to death. I am telling you that the Portuguese came in slave raiding. The problem was when they was traveling down the rivers, they engaged African Marines. So I didn't know that Africans also had navies. And the boats was better because it could navigate. They had the war canoes that could hold over 200 people. They had iron tips, poison tips, bows and arrows. And it was downright nasty with it and well organized. And they ran their ass up out of there. Excuse my language. They used to think the Christians was actually eating Africans. They was like, why are they just snatching people? So obviously there was a difference in the way they conducted business in slavery than coming and snatching somebody. It's obvious right there when you start to read the original documentation. So you can't be serious with it if you're not going to be willing to admit that they came in first, disturbed the system that was in place, that didn't have you in slavery for the rest of your life. So if you owe money, you be enslaved, right? If you was a captive of war, you be enslaved, right? Okay, but not your family's family. Now, you always got out of order human beings, and you always got out of order countries. So maybe the Dahomey just a group of out of order dudes, but that does not fit for the whole African continent. That's a ridiculous statement right there. To take one nation, they never do it with Europeans. Take one nation and apply those same ideas and concepts on the rest of separate governing nations. This is the craziest thing ever, bro. Like, I'm confused with that. That's not right. That's not historically accurate, and that's not how you're supposed to tell a story. Yes, brother, you're supposed to talk about the Dahomey. No joke. But you're not supposed to make the Dahomey way they treated how all African separate nations carried the business of slavery. You're not supposed to do it. Each individual nation has an individual story, and their responses, see, because this is a response. Okay, it's a response to colonial powers coming in, disrupting an already organized trading system. Let's get that straight. So I'm not the one to tell a functioning nation on who to lock up and who not to lock up, right? I'm not a person telling people how to treat people that just won't pay their daggone bills. I'm not that guy. So whatever reason they had to do it, that was their reasoning. Now, we can judge it morally, no more than I'm going to say, well, I shouldn't have got beatings when I was growing up. Now, if you beat somebody, you're going to jail. But I ain't going to sit back and tell my grandmother, my great grandmother, you shouldn't have been. They was crazy for doing it. No, that's not actually how it worked. So as we get better at understanding human behavior over time, nations correct that. Everybody is allowed to correct that. So I'm not making no excuse for the Dahomey, but the Dahomey situation is not indicative of how most Africans carry the slave trade. I just want to kind of put that out there.
It actually is, because not only do you see the Dahomey.
Hold up, Trevor. Let brother
I just wanted to say the problem I have with what Trevor is saying is basically he is parroting what these white people say about Africans trading their own or selling their own into slavery. That's essentially what you're saying, and that's what I have a problem with. And Brother Anki broke it all the way down. And the fact that you still are standing on your square and you're saying that, it speaks volumes.
Yeah, thank you. So it wasn't just the Dahomey, it was also other kingdoms like the Oyo Kingdom. I brought up the Oyo Kingdom, who was also actively involved. And we don't have to talk about the entire continent of Africa. We're talking about specifically West Africa, because that's primarily where the victims of the transatlantic slave trade were taken from. But what I will say is that the book that Dr. Ma'at pulled up, and I know the young lady says that I'm parroting white people talking points. I'm smarter than probably most of the whites I know. I don't need to parrot white people. I don't need white people that help me think. I don't know who does that. I'm black. I don't need any of that.
Black and proud.
And exactly. And so the book that Dr. Ma'at pulled up, actually what Malin Newitt says in that book, she actually says that the primary acquisition of enslaved people was through trading.
Nobody.
Can I just finish? So in that book, Malin Newitt says that the primary acquisition of enslaved people was through trading. Were people kidnapped? Yes, but was she?
And that was my point. Let me stop right there, because we talk about listening comprehension. Let me stop. I had to interject you, because you're not going to misrepresent what I said. I said, hold on. I said that when the slave trade started, right before it became a system of where you're buying and selling, I said it started with kidnapping and raiding. It started with kidnapping and raiding. I never said that they didn't get. I never. So don't misrepresent anything that I said on this platform. I clearly said that it started with kidnapping and raiding. It started with kidnapping and raiding. That's what I said. So the point that you're making is not countering anything that I said previously.
You said they were trading also, right?
I also said they were trading. So I don't understand the point of you bringing that up, Trevor. Like, what are you saying?
Here's my point.
Please.
People try to misrepresent the transatlantic slave trade as if the Europeans mainly kidnapped and
no one said mainly kidnapped. No one said that. Yes, but please.
So this isn't specific to this conversation. People that are so caught up on like this fuzzy feeling of like togetherness because of skin color, they're caught up on this. They try to paint it as if the Europeans went in and plundered and pillaged in the very book that you pulled up. And I would love to see what page it said it started with kidnapping and pillaging.
Read the book. Get the book. Get the book.
Trevor, you funny now,
yeah,
Trevor.
so
Now
I'm
I'm almost
actually,
saying I can't
so I'm
even
actually,
listen to you,
I'm,
Trevor.
I'm actually, so I'm actually telling you exactly what Malin
You
Nuit
didn't even know.
outlined.
You didn't even know. You never even
I
read the
didn't even
book.
know
You
what.
want to sit up here and have it. I'm not
Wait,
doing it. Trevor, I'm
well,
not. Trevor, I tried to be respectful. You're trying to have a conversation about a damn book you never read. Go figure
okay.
that. You're going
All
to
right.
sit here and talk to me about a book you never read because you on
Okay.
Google right now.
All
Hold
right,
on,
cool.
Trevor. No, Trevor, hold on. Hold on, man. Hold on. Let me talk. Golly. You're sitting here wanting to have an intelligent conversation about a book that you never read because you're Googling stuff. And then you're not listening to what I'm saying. I said that it started, and I said the Portuguese will tell you that in this book that they initially, when they went in there, find the book. I'm not going to do the reading for it. I'm not going to. Let me put them out. I'm trying. Trevor, listen to what I'm saying. I am not going to engage in a discussion with you about a book that you never read. I gave you a source. I told you what's in it. This conversation is being live streamed right now. I'm not going to take it down or edit it. So you can go back, you can read this book and come back to this conversation, then jump in the conversation. But I refuse to have a debate with you over a book that you have not read. That you sitting over there Googling stuff in real time and trying to counter the points that come on, Trevor. That's not an intellectual discourse.
That's fine. Outside of the book.
Okay,
outside of the book, that's fine. I brought up a source of a person from firsthand experience, not somebody that was born in the 20th century. I brought up a source of a Robert Norris who wrote about the Dahomey tribe and wrote about the trading and the types of things that they engaged in. And he never wrote about how he went in and had to kidnap people and drag them to the boat and all these things. These people willingly traded. And I'll let you get back to the show. I appreciate you.
No, don't run. Nope, don't run.
No, I'm not running. But I don't want to take up all. I don't want to take up all the space.
Good conversation. Let me say this.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
Hold on. I want to know before you leave because you're trying to have a hostile escape or something. Listen.
I just don't want to interrupt the show.
No, listen. It's a good conversation, yo. Sometimes we need the bad guy. I don't know if it's me or you. Let me say this to you, Trevor. Trevor, I want you to know, I don't want you to lead this conversation. I don't want people who's going to take this video and make it because we got the FBA people's going to grab it and play the game. I don't want you to think that I think there's a white man anything. I don't think there's a such thing as the white man science or the white man, but there is a worldview, right? And you got to know, I don't know why you think in your mind that African people was well studied and they understood everything about them before they got to Africa. That's not fundamentally true. So for you to think they went in there doing what people do when they trying to rob, steal, whatever it was, fake like I'm a trade. First of all, it was always faking like we're trying to trade. They had alternative motives. I don't think you would actually disagree with that now, would you, Trevor? Seriously, you don't think they went there smiling and let's go ahead and that we gonna have fair trade with these people? You think they was thinking that though? Do you really think that, Trevor? Yeah, and this is important to the conversation, bro.
Did they think they were going to have fair trade?
No, they go in there saying, yo, we just gonna have fair trade, no problem. We're gonna be fair. No, they went in there with alternative motives the whole time. Even when they got beat down and stopped from slave raiding, even when they got beat on that, they say, okay, let's reorganize it. We can't. They went in there with the bulldozer and got beat up. That's what happened. Then they had to bow down, right? They had to figure out some people to knew the language, get some people to come and talk and negotiate, and they had to chill their crazy asses out. Excuse my language for a minute. And they had to adhere. Watch this. They got beat so bad, bro. See, this is what people don't talk about. They got beat so bad by those organized African nations. Everybody didn't live in the bush, that they had to adhere to African rules and trading. They was like, man, they thought about it like anybody. Let's reorganize this. Let's play the game for a while. Once we get some people that we can talk to and communicate back and forth, then we go right back to our real plan, what we really want to do. So they calmed it down. They fit in. They bought slaves. Now, if you think that the people who were selling slaves to them in the slave market actually knew they was taking them to the United States of America, then there's something wrong with you. They didn't know. And if you actually thought they understood the rules of engagement for European slavery, then that's something wrong with you. At first, they knew none of that. Now, as things went on, they start to understand that, bro. Nobody's saying you're wrong with that. I'm just saying you have to be able to see both sides to get the story, bro. It can't be just your side, Trevor, and it can't be just our side. So let's let's using historical content. Let's blend the two things together and get historical accuracy. That's all I'm saying, Trevor. Just for the record, I don't want you to
have I
get
said
taken
that's been
again.
historical inaccurate.
The way you're framing it. You have
what have I said that's been historically inaccurate?
I said you have historical facts, but the way you're framing it distorts the history. That's all I'm saying.
Like what? Like how? Can you give me an example? Because I don't understand that.
If you Dahomey is half the deaf, and Dahomey and Dahomey practices, and forget there are other people. There are people that predate.
I brought up the Oyo.
Hold on for me. There are people that predate all that. Are you not familiar with King Alfonso? Right there. Are you not familiar with?
No, hold on. Yeah, let's start there. Yeah, no. Are you familiar with King Alfonso, Trevor, and where he's located?
Right. So why even talk about the slave trade? Hold on. I want to say this. I'm no longer having this conversation.
That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm not. No, Doc. You know what?
When I said it, when I got frustrated, keep him on there. I can't.
I see where his weakness is now.
I just don't understand what you're talking about, man. Like, what's the point? Like, you keep saying you're going to Dahomey us to death. Like you're making light of a kingdom that literally profited off the trade of black bodies.
No, watch this.
It's weird, man.
Watch this, bro. I'm gonna show you what's going on.
Dahomey us to death.
Hold on.
Confederacy is the death. Like it's the same thing.
So what's the time period for
the Dahomey? Yes, the Dahomey and the Europeans were friends. They were trading.
No.
They were buddies. If they existed today, they would go on a golf course, have a cigar, and do 12 holes together.
What is the time period for the Dahomey?
The Dahomey existed early 17th, 16th century during the entire transatlantic slave.
That's about what? That's about what?
The 17th, 16th century?
That's about what?
It's the 17th and the 16th century.
18 what? If you say 17, if you say
you said 16th or 17th century, you do know what that is.
18, oh, well,
you do know what that. You know what you're saying, right, Trevor?
Yes, 16th and the 17th century. Do you know when that time period is?
Yes. So if you say,
why are you saying 18?
If you say 16th century, you're saying 1701 going. Come on, yo.
Exactly. Come on, Trevor. You know that.
No, you're not.
What?
Trevor, what's the 16th century, Trevor? Just say it.
It's
Trevor, say
it. You're tripping.
Say it.
You guys.
No. I'm not. No, I'm asking you. He's saying
the 16th century is the 1500s.
Exactly.
No. Don't exactly. Now you just said if I'm saying the 17th century, I'm saying the 1800s.
I didn't say that. Onk said that. So get it right. I didn't say that.
So what is the point? Are we splitting hairs at this point? Because this is going in circles.
This is the wild thing, man. Like you guys got to stop like this whole thing, man. You know,
Trevor, you
said if I say in the
Trevor,
16th century.
Trevor,
I just think it's crazy if that you are
going to skate past the fact she just said the 1700s and the 16th century.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Well, we got the recordings. We can
you had the recording. So please, you had the recording, Trevor. I never said that the 17th century was the 1800s. Onk said that.
And then you came in like,
wait, no, I said, hold on, wait.
You don't know? Yeah, you came in like,
no, you miscan.
Come
on. You doing bad.
Trevor,
you doing bad.
I'm doing bad.
You doing bad. You making up stuff, Trevor. You making up stuff.
You might want to edit this.
No, you might want to edit this, doctor. I'm not editing anything because I didn't say that the 1700s was 1800s.
Watch this.
I didn't say that.
I said the 16th century was the 1700s.
No, I didn't, Trevor. Onk said that.
How much you want to bet?
No,
I bet you $1,000, Trevor.
Bet it.
No, Trevor. How about I was wrong? No, hold on, man. In conversation, you can say stuff wrong, and it's okay.
Exactly, but the point I'm trying to make is that you're right. I do agree with you, that you can say stuff wrong when you're having a conversation, but don't tell me that I said it wrong when it was somebody else who said it. That's my
right. I said it, not Doc.
I do got a question. Just this is a basic question. So Trevor, since you are comparing, because I'm stuck right there. Since you comparing what the Dahomey tribe did, so are you saying that the Dahomeys were also responsible for rape, murder, pillage, killing babies, chopping off feet, like all of those things, all the atrocities that happened in the Americas to African enslaved people? Are you saying that is equivalent to the Dahomeys trading the Africans to the Europeans. You are still on that it's the same thing.
Well, what I'll say is that the Dahomey is indirectly responsible. And what I'll also say, citing the source that Robert Norris, the book he wrote about his experience in West Africa, that the people that the Dahomey did not trade ended up, sometimes they would sacrifice them and murder them. I would say that it is just as deplorable and just as horrible as what the Europeans did to the Africans that arrived in America. Now, what I will say is that race-based chattel slavery, as you know, you guys were talking about earlier, race-based chattel slavery was specific to America. I will say that. And that existed nowhere else. And nowhere else was it legally codified that because of your color of your skin, you were subject to chattels, being a chattel slave just by that. But
okay, Trevor, let me ask you a question. What was the name of the book? What was the name? Hold on, brother. Hold on. What was the name of the book that you referenced, Trevor?
Yeah, it's by Robert Norris. It's called
Did you actually read it? Because if you did, turn your camera on and show me your book. You know how I show you the book. I'll show you the books I've read. Or say, hold on, this is the book. This is the book. Hold on. I showed you this. I showed you this one.
Yeah.
To understand Africans slavery in Africa. You have this book right here by Theophile Obenga, Readings in Pre-Colonial Central Africa. Right. This is the book right here. Mm-hmm. You also have Pre-Colonial Black Africa by Sheikh Anta-Diop. That's a book right here. So I have my books that I read. I don't just come online and Google. Sheikh Anta-Diop. Some people say D-I-O-P, but it's French, so it's Diop. You see what I'm saying? Okay. So you have Pre-Colonial Africa by Pre-Colonial Black Africa.
It's not a crease in that book, doctor. It ain't one crease in the book.
You crazy. You crazy. You crazy. You crazy. You crazy. You crazy.
Hey, Doc.
Crazy.
Hey,
hold on. You crazy.
Bye,
hold on. Look. Hey, Trevor. So turn the camera on and show us your book. Show me your books. Show me your books, Trevor.
Yeah,
show me your books.
See, hold on. I would have turned it on already.
Yeah, here it is. There it is. You see my stuff. Scratches, highlights.
That's one book, sister.
It's four. It's four. Well, Trevor. You're just deflecting from the fact that you don't read and you want to jump in. Let me put you here, Trevor. You're deflecting from the fact that you don't read and you want to have an intelligent conversation about topics using Google. You are a Google person. You're not a reader. You're not a scholar. You try to argue. Yeah, and then you don't even the homie, and you chat. You trying to chat GPT.
The homies.
He using chat GTP. Yeah, he didn't read one book. You don't read. Right, you don't even know about the Congo. We asked you, know about King Alfonso? You know about the Congo? I don't know about this. Do you know about the kidnapping and the raiding? I don't know about this. Come back to the discussion when you actually know, when you actually read. You don't read. I clearly can tell. You do not read. You Google. That's what you do.
Some white person told him about the homie and he Googled it.
Exactly. Yeah, he Googled it. That's all he did was Google. He don't read nothing. They want to tell me you don't read. I read the whole thing, buddy. I read all four of these books, buddy. All four. And you see my library behind me and books on the floor. I read. That's what I do. You Google. And then you try to come on and sound articulate and you make points and you try to argue things that aren't being argued. You made a lot of logical fallacies when we were talking, and you argue from a position of ignorance. So anyway, then he tried to
somebody said Trevor had too much time.
Yeah, he did. Trevor had too much time. Third party. I see third party. You in the building. Third party. You have the floor.
So Doc, I just want to, if I'm saying my point got derailed because I mischaracterized what the 17th century was, right? My point was that, you have to start with the Portuguese because they was the first making first contact, right? And that particular junction that was spur on the transcontinental slave trade. They had the Canary Islands and all that. They had control of that. I know I ain't tripping, right? And then so you got to talk about the Portuguese. You got to talk about King Alfonso. How you not talk about King Alfonso, right? How you don't understand how they dealt with it? How you did the wars with then the Zing and all them. You deal with all that, and then by the time you get to the homie, right, which is definitely a different section of time, and then we can talk about all that. We can talk about how things evolved right? Culturally, how different strategies and different approaches was taken. I mean, that's how you actually teach that. You don't just start with the super wild guys after we done did it for a while and we comfortably in it. Then now we come on, man. Like, who starts it off like that? I think that's disingenuous.
Yeah, he said, when you had asked him the question, he said something like 17th, and he said the 17th and 16th century. And I heard you say what? And then you were trying to, I guess, get a number from him, and then you said you were trying to get a number, and then you said, well, 1800s, and he was like, what? And that's when I was kind of confused. Like when you said, well, you were trying to get a number, he was saying 16th, 17th century. So I was trying to pull it out of him, like, what do you mean by that? But then he tried to say, so I don't know. That was a lot. But I see that third party, you were in the chat, saying a lot of stuff. Yeah. So third party, you have the floor. Can you hear me?
Okay, I had to unmute. So
third party's not muted. Third party, you gotta,
18. It's the 18th and 19th century when the homie did.
Do you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm with Trevor. 100%.
No problem.
With Trevor. All right. So and I'm talking about this book.
Let's see.
All right.
I can't see it. Put it up there.
Sierra Leone. It says A New History of Sierra Leone.
Okay.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the person who wrote this book's name is Joe A.D. Ali, born in Salina, Moyamba, in southern province of Sierra Leone. I picked up this book in Sierra Leone when I was over there to do some trading, some business. And I talked to a number of people.
Mm-hmm.
I went with a friend of mine, that's Sierra Leonean from Detroit, to go over there, and he went with me. On that trip, I went through Ghana because we missed our flight, and we landed in Accra, had to get a car to drive all the way over to Freetown. So I wound up driving through 3 different countries to get there.
Mm-hmm.
This right here, and I can read right here that
read it.
Portuguese sailor Alvaro Fernandez anchored in the Estuary Roquel in 1447. Right? That was a Portuguese sailor that came over there to start the slave trade. And as everybody knows, most slaves from Sierra Leone were taken to South Carolina because they were experts in rice growing. So at that point, the book goes on to talk about, and this is an important part, because what I was saying in the chat is that, and I will agree with all of you guys doctors? Dr. Ankh?
No, don't do me like that.
Okay, I will agree with him is that the only difference in the slave trade was the fact that it went on for 400 years here in the United States. Beyond that, and what I said in the chat was when you were reading from a book that there were concubines, that is nothing more than a euphemistic term to hold a woman for sex. All right.
What are we talking about here? What, is that
what am I talking about? I'm talking about what you guys said. What you guys.
You got to talk about what we talking about on point. You have said.
Oh wait. Are you going to tell me
you
did not talk about that? You're going to tell me you did not say anything about.
We didn't say nothing about no concubines. What are you talking about, sir?
Nobody. No one said. No one exonerated.
You read.
Hey, third party. Third party, you yelling. Third party, calm down, brother. Calm down, third party. Third party. I have read something from this book right here, even though Trevor said I didn't read it. I read something from this book right here, Slavery and African Ethnicities in the Americas. Read this book from cover to cover. Oh, and Trevor, another thing you said was it was one book that was marked up. Now you see the markings in this book right here. Okay. So anyway, it's markings in all of my books, by the way. I'm one of those people that scribble. But I was reading something about, and it did mention concubines. It talked about that in that section on warfare. No one ever said that African people didn't rape or murder or pillage or sell, or no one said that. I don't know third party, when you started listening to the discussion, but we never said that like this stuff didn't happen. No one on this platform, on this panel, romanticizes Africa. No, nobody. I done read a lot of stuff, a third party, about the things that the kings were doing. In fact, Sister Constance would tell you, when I started this discussion, third party, I talked about how in this particular book right here that Trevor said I didn't read, I talked about how in this particular book, the Portuguese laughed at us, and they talked about how Africans sold people for horses. You know, one trader, he was like, man, I took some horses over there and got a whole bunch of people. You know what I mean? People were sold for horses, rum, mirrors, silk. I talked about that. So I never said that they didn't do. And a matter of fact, third party, just to add to your point, one of the Portuguese writers talked about how when they went over to trade with the kings or with the chiefs, they said that they offered them young girls, you know, while they were there, concubines. So I never, no one ever denied that.
So let's stay on topic, right? So we were talking about the transatlantic slave trade and how it's perceived, and how we were talking about the Irish said they were slaves too, and there was a comparison to chattel slavery and, you know, other types of slavery. Sir, third party, what's your contribution to that part of the conversation? Because what you're talking about has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
Yep, I'm gonna unmute you. Here you go, third party. Go
Okay,
ahead.
so
you have the floor.
all right, what I said was in reference to what was read, so that that was a part. Okay, now give me a chance to read a paragraph, and then I'm going to give you back the floor.
You said you agreed with Trevor. I want to know what you agreed with Trevor about.
Yeah, I'm curious.
I agreed with Trevor that when you not Dr. Mayat, what's your name?
Constance Carter.
Constance.
Yes.
All right. You made a distinction between the fact that we were sold, and that the slavery that took place in Africa was far different from what happened in the United States.
And I'm still,
I support her on that 1,000%.
Hold on. So now what I'm going to do here is read a paragraph as to how the trade was conducted. How trade was conducted. Coastal rulers had welcomed the European traders in hope that they too would benefit from the trade. So they arranged that all major trade transactions should be carried out only on the coast. Only on the coast. The European traders were therefore forbidden to go into the interior to trade, and had to pay rents and other tribute to coastal rulers for permission to trade. The ruler was the trader's landlord, and the trader became the ruler's stranger. The landlord was responsible for the stranger's security as well as for his actions. As trade developed, more European goods were exchanged for ivory, beeswax, cowhides, camwood, some gold, and slaves. Some dishonest traders, like John Hawkins, had tried to kidnap slaves and run away with them. In order to discourage this bad practice, coastal rulers, the kings, the tribal leaders, began to demand hostages of the ship's crews as insurance against ungentlemanly conduct by European slave dealers. So what happened is that the kings and the coastal rulers said, oh no, you can't go in there and do that trade. Now I'm going to finish off with this one final thought. By the mid 1700s, at first there were 200 slaves during the Portuguese, that first trade. By the mid 1750s, over 2,000 slaves had been grabbed, or been traded, I should say.
When you say 200, when you say 200 third party, do you know where they got those Africans
along
from?
The coast of Guinea and Sierra Leone, the west coast.
You're saying the
And so-
first. You're saying the first. You're saying that the first enslaved Africans that the Portuguese grabbed came from Guinea, and you said where else?
This book says that according to this Portuguese ship, that they were around Bunsey Island. That's Sierra Leone.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I know where.
Okay,
Bunty
so
is.
hold on. So this is what I got to say to another point that was brought up. The fact that
Hold on.
You didn't hit the first point.
okay,
I
no,
want
I
to know how.
then what I read, then what am I dealing with here then?
Hold on.
I can tell you, I thought you read something to agree with us at that point. Am I tripping?
Exactly.
Hold on.
We all agreed that they sold them for goods and
Yeah, did you wait? Did you just read something to agree with us?
yes.
I thought you was gonna show us something to show how horrific
did you
the
not
African slavery
hear-
was. Just
Right.
like Andre, I thought that you was reading though, bro. I'm not
Right.
Your name is Ankh, right?
No. Slow down. We got come on, yo. We got to be able to communicate. Listen,
So
bro.
you guys aren't gonna give me a chance.
No, hold on. You got
No. It's not that.
No. I
Not that.
respect your opinion. I swear to goodness, yo. I'm sitting there listening to you, right? I thought you was gonna find something that showed that African slavery was just as vicious and just as crazy as European slavery was. I agree. The institution of slavery is not free.
One
That's
point
all I
at
thought,
a
bro.
time. 1 point at a time.
Your first point is to explain what
And
this
here's the point.
Mhm.
The point is that the coastal rulers
Uh-huh.
controlled the traders from going into inland to even get slaves, to enslave people.
Okay.
They controlled it and said you could not go any further from the coast. That defeats what you guys have been talking about. You
No,
talk about it.
sure.
They went there. The African tribes specifically went in there to get capture. So it wasn't about warfare.
You mean the Portuguese?
The Portuguese weren't even allowed to go into the interior.
So
They were not
how
allowed
was
to go in there.
African slavery. Let me just say real slow. How was
Golly.
African slavery the same as North American chattel slavery?
Yeah, that's all.
From
We
what you just read.
Because while I was there, I happened to visit places that when the slaves were captured, they were chained, they were beaten. And if you think that during the time of that capture that the women weren't raped, the men weren't shot and killed and beaten,
They
then I
were
don't know what we're talking
prisoners
about.
of war. We've all acknowledged. We've all acknowledged they were prisoners of
What is
war.
the difference between
They
that
say shot.
and
By
what
the time they got
happened in the
guns,
United States?
where they get the
And
guns?
400 years of chattel slavery?
That's
that
the
was-
only thing I agree with. That's the, hold on. Did I
Come on
make
now.
a distinction? Did I make a distinction and said I agreed with the guy in the green that was one of the only differences? So I'm going to stop with this.
All right, go ahead, bro.
Here it is. Here it
No.
is. If you don't think that between the ships going to the United States and then coming back, that word wasn't sent,
Mhm.
because there were Africans that were on the slave ships going back and forth, that word wasn't sent, that there was brutality going on
Sir.
in the Americas, then
Sir,
you guys,
if you got
like
that-
I said, you're living in La La Land.
If you got that out of that
You're
book,
living in La La Land.
wait. If you got that out of that book, what you just read us,
Told you I have been there. I
have a
spoke to
comprehension-
people.
you have a
I've been to
comprehension
I've
problem.
been there. I've been to 5
So
countries.
what? You didn't prove it by what you read. You have a comprehension
Have you
problem.
been there?
sir.
Have you talked to people? This
You
is
have a
being
comprehension
taught.
problem.
This is
You
being
read
taught.
one thing, you said something different. You have
You
a
guys are in denial.
comprehension
You're in
problem.
denial.
No,
You're
we're
in
not.
denial.
No,
You
hold on.
don't comprehend. You tell
No, hold on
everybody
for a
else
minute.
that
I'm listening
No,
to
you're
what
right.
you're reading, and it has
comprehend.
nothing to do with
you
what you
have
said,
no
sir.
ability, and you're operating on something that you just want to believe.
I'm listening to what
the
you read,
process
and
that
I'm
you
listening
want
to
to
what you
tell
said,
everybody
and
else.
they don't add
Let
up.
me handle this. Let me ask
Listen,
you a question, bro.
The internet is wild, boy. That's why I'm
Well, it's
laughing,
no
man.
wild.
Hold on.
Let me
Hold
handle this,
Third
Doc.
party. Hold on.
One second, let me handle this.
Hold on, third party. Hold on.
Hey, no, listen. What
No,
do you
it's just,
think?
it's
You
wild.
unmuted me, so you
No,
guys
hold
can
on,
have
third
a
party.
discussion.
No, third party. Hold on. No, because everybody was talking at the same time.
That was fine.
I just want to say, it's wild out here, man. Like
In these streets.
and he hung up, man. Damn, third party. I didn't want you to leave. I just muted you to get some order. But it's just really wild out here, man. Like I'm just listening to people and how they comprehend or lack thereof, and it's just wild out here, man. Trevor wanted to have a whole debate with me about a book he never read. I've never experienced stuff like this, man. Like he wanted to have an intelligent conversation with me and debate me on a book you can't make this stuff up, man, in these internet streets, man. It's wild out here, man. And then the brother third party, he in the chat going off, arguing stuff that we went, and that's why I read the definition about listening comprehension. He's arguing stuff that claims that were never made. Like, it's wild out here, Unc. And this is what I want to say, Unc, and I shut up. I pass the mic to you. I really advocate for people to stay in school. Okay. Stay in school. Okay. I don't care what people say. Stay in school, learn the English language, learn about context clues, strengthen your reading and your listening comprehension. I'm going to continue to advocate for that. I remember back in the day, Baltimore City used to be the city that reads. We used to go to the library. You know what I mean? Reading was a household practice and value. And we as a people need to get back to that, because I'm noticing that people lack reading and listening comprehension is very weak. And I'm talking about in our community, because that's who I engage, daily. People in our community. I see it in young children. I also see it in teenagers. I see it in young adults. I see it in older adults. I see it in elders. We got to get back, y'all. We got to get back to reading. You know what I mean? We got to get back to that, because this is what happens, man. This is what happens when you drop out of school, you don't read, this is what happens, man. And I see I am King Sosa came in, but Unc, you got the floor, man. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. It's wild out here, man.
That's the pseudo killer right there. I just wanted the listening audience to know, I'm actually not disagreeing with the two brothers at all. I'm just simply saying the way the context is being framed. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like, but I ain't never heard nobody say that the global slave trade was the same as slavery in Africa.
So you disagree? So that's what they're saying. So you disagree?
Both of them are saying.
That's what both of them saying.
No. I'm saying I disagree with that part of their argument, but I totally agree with the homie how out of order they was.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do too.
But there's a chronology to this thing. And to act like Europeans didn't come in trying to steal people is the crazy thing. King Alfonso, he ended up agreeing with it. Then he realized they was just too wild, and he switched up on it because they never kept their word.
And he started crying. Right, we got the letter right here. The letter's in here.
But why would he cry if it was the same thing he was used to dealing with? Make that make sense. Why would he be outraged with it? What I'm saying? Why would you have to have a response? Watch this. Why would you have to have a response to slavery, right? If you already had that type of thing going on like that, what do you mean responding to? Aren't you used to it? I don't know, man.
Listen. What was just crazy to me was that he was reading something totally different than what he was saying. I was confused.
That's all I'm saying. Like, come on, bro.
He started going off. He's like, yeah. And this, I said, oh my god.
But he was reading what we had already said earlier. He was saying the same thing, but he was
man. That was funny. That was funny.
Third party was hilarious.
Third party was hilarious. Third party was hilarious, man. He can come back anytime.
Shout out third party.
Shout out the third party, listen, man.
And he said that with his whole heart too.
He did. He was in there. He was going off, man. Shout out the third party, man. Next time you go to Sierra Leone, invite the great doctor. I'll be right there with you, brother. I go right there with you, man. I'm there. King Sosa, I am King Sosa. What do you have to say, man, before we close out?
Pseudo killer, what's good, brother?
What's good? I did want to say, because like some of the part I agree with, like the going inland part, right? Mm-hmm. Like that was really not an option for the Portuguese. I'm not familiar with that book, but most of the scholars I read, pretty much all of them, will tell you that wasn't the case. One, the ship's too big.
No. We ain't saying they went in with the ships. I am King Sosa. I thought he was a pseudo killer.
Not just the ships.
Yeah, you said the ships.
Malaria.
No, hold on. You said the ships was too big. No one said they went in with ships and grabbed, like, no, it in their writings in this particular book. And shout out to Travis, who's in the building. He said the same thing. It did start with kidnapping. You say you don't know what scholars. Here's a good book. They talk about it. They talk about it themselves. I Am King Sosa, and even in this book, she talks about it. Throughout. It was kidnapping. They were kidnapping. That's what they were initially doing. They were kidnapping. They were also raiding. And they said they got tired of getting hit with poisonous arrows. And you're right. After that, then they're like, okay, let's establish some sort of system with these people. And you're right, it was and they even realized it's dangerous to go inside. But they did initially, that's what they did, and they said it out of their own mouths. But go ahead, I Am King Sosa.
Yeah, like I didn't know scholars, right? I said I didn't know many scholars say that. And what I was saying, I wasn't just stopping at just the boats. Well, I was continuing.
Okay, go ahead.
Malaria, the tsetse fly. One, the interior is filled with millions of Africans. There are not that many Portuguese people. They don't have maps. They don't have the logistics. So, right? And they just tapped into a network that already existed. They didn't need to do that, right? That was not the point about going inland, right? And then the other piece about, did the Africans care? I mean, you can't really have it both ways. They didn't see themselves as the same. So why would they, you know what I'm saying? So if they didn't see themselves, they can't the same, just like a crip in the blood. Why would you care what happened to them? They just didn't care. So I do. So
I don't know any scholars that even tackled that. Like that's something that we can discuss and something we can think.
I heard that happened. Right?
I'm just like, when he wanted to get into that, whether they cared or didn't care.
Yeah, that's cool.
I wasn't there. Like I've never heard scholars even talk about if they cared or if they, you know what I mean? Like that's subjective. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's very subjective.
But to that, the question that y'all put in, I would say that generally too, though, Pan-Africanists in general, throughout, I can't speak for all of them, just from my growing up and hearing them, they did most of what I learned about actual slavery, I learned later on in life studying on my own. Right? When you listen to even people like John Henry Clark and all, they really downplayed the enrollment. It was really dismissive. They didn't really talk about some of the nuance. And even when you talk about prisoners of war, like sometimes I understand that, but there's also nuance to that because these are slave raids. So it's like, if you come and raid my house, Doc, and sell me into slavery, you can really label me a prisoner of war. But but that's not fair to me because I'm not really at war with you. I just want to live. You know what I'm saying? And what they did is they preyed on the people that couldn't defend themselves inland. And then there was war with each other. So then sometimes with war with each other, they would sell, the cats like that. But a lot of time they preyed on people who just couldn't protect themselves. That's just the harsh reality of it. And I feel like, we just be open and honest about everything. We don't gotta sugarcoat nothing to hide it. The history, the facts.
Let me ask you a question. Would there anybody on the panel sugarcoat or hide anything?
I'm speaking in general. Like if it don't fit, like don't accept it that way. You know what I'm saying?
I'm just asking.
If you look at King Alfonso, right? A good book to read too. I mean, Uncle Tay, man, we had many conversations about this.
That's our favorite conversation.
Read many journals on it. If you read Nzinga, Linda Haywood, that book has some of the writings from the port. What she did is she had Portuguese records and writings translated.
That's this book right here. That's this book right here.
Right, to get the story of Queen Nzinga in Angola, and that's when you start learning about the Mbengalas. If you know what the Mbengalas are, they were the people that aided the Portuguese. They were a fierce, right. You know what I'm saying? They were a fierce fighting force over there, and that's why when King Alfonso in those letters, that's why he was upset because the people had got another trade partner. And he was like, yo, where you get them slaves from? You're supposed to go through me. This is in his writings. And he was like, tell me where you got, and they would not tell him who he got the trade from, who he got the slaves from. This was part of the, and the beef, because also he was saying like, we had specific people that we all selling for slaves and certain people are off limits, right? And then there's also nuance to when it shifted to slavery as a mode, like when they were attacking to get slaves, they would trump up charges to enslave people. Like, so there's a lot of, there's a lot of historical context to it that, we can add, but it'll take forever, but that's all I want to say.
Okay. And I appreciate you weighing in. I Am King Sosa. Unc, did you want to say something? Or Sister Constance, did you want to say something? Or
I would just like to say that, based off what I know, them Europeans was on them damn rivers sailing. Now, last time I checked, a river ain't on the outside of the coast. So that river system took them to places where they got beat up, right? And they had a problem with the mosquitoes, but they had an overwhelming problem with the natives who wasn't trying to hear it. They were shooting them up. They were surrounding their boat. There's accounts of 3 European ships on the river. That's a big river right there. I'm gonna get the river and all that. And they had to tie their boats together, their ships together, because those African war canoes were surrounding them and killing them up. Right? So I don't know. I know they wasn't deep in the interior, but they was in the area where they could get plenty of slaves from. And they was raiding. And those particular Africans thought that they was cannibals. So the first thing we understood about Christians was they was cannibals. And this was based off of them stealing people. They was like, why are they just stealing people? Like they eating them. They thought they was actually stealing people and eating them. So I'm trying to find a document right now. I'm going to find a document and I'm going to read it. And it talks about how unsuccessful they end up being because, first of all, they couldn't get nobody to speak the language. So you got to get a person, teach them your language, can speak the other language, and then don't trick you. You got to get all that going. You got to develop relationships. And those first encounters, that wasn't going down. So over time, they worked it out, figured out how the way to do it. They fell into the African trading system. They did all that. And then we get this thing really kicked off. And you keep rolling. And then so my point was you get different responses to it, man. But you wouldn't have had to have a response to it if it wasn't something new that was introduced into the ecology. That's all I'm trying to say. Like we're going to act like that's all the Africans did was sell slaves. No, the trade got almost decentralized. I don't want to say decentralized. That's all you could do. But it started transferring from, a lot of different products and goods to mainly slavery. That started to occur. Now you introduce the gun. So now I'm a Crip, you're a Blood. The Bloods got the guns. Now what I got to do to get the guns now? I got some slaves that I got in the war over here. I'm going to sell them. And so all that was introduced to the game. I'm trying to say, as African Americans, we can't sit here and see that play. That's the most craziest thing to me. We can't see that. You got people that are trying to get their economies booming, and they do it all for free labor. They're not going to be honest. They're going to do everything possible. They're going to take advantage. You know what I like to say? I say, when you do drugs, you know what drugs do? It tap into the worst of you. Europeans tapped into the worst of people. Now, that's not an excuse for them to do it, but just the way they handle business put you in certain circumstances to even have to make you be the way you are. Just like if you're in prison, you have to think a certain way now. No excuses. You shouldn't have been put in there, but it's a different mind frame. So when the Europeans came in, they changed the way people seen things, but giving other people advantages. They played both sides of the coin. They did all of that, man. And I think the whole story needs to be told.
Yeah.
Not jump on one side, not jump on this side. That's all I'm saying.
No, absolutely. Orlando.
I have a hard stop, but thank you guys. This was a great.
Hey, thank you, Queen, for hopping. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, this is great. Brother Third Party, listen, I love your conviction. You go to Africa, So when I go to Africa, I'm gonna know, because he said he went to Africa and he know.
He was anyway. I know, but no, sis, I appreciate you. I know where you are. Look, I know where you are now. I'm gonna be hitting you up so you can pull up.
All right, y'all. Enjoy your night.
All right,
and you do the same. Peace.
Appreciate you.
Peace. All right, brother Orlando.
Peace. Just brother Orlando, brother Gullah. The community might know me there too. What's good with it? Pseudo killer. Peace,
warrior. Peace.
I want to say. Yeah, I want to say too, what I'm saying, that's like to add to the add to some of the scholarship or some of the knowledge. That's why the Portuguese, a lot of the early settlements of Portuguese was on the islands and the coast of West Africa. San Tomé, Madeira, Cape Verde and places like that wasn't inhibited. And two, the West Africans that they encountered, these wasn't, so these were very organized medieval Iron Age West Africans. So this was the Jolof Empire. And they were independent at this time, but they are offshoot of the Mali Empire. The Senegambia region. So they had, infantry, and cavalry. They had decorated like medieval knight type warriors. These wasn't like this primitive, but people would think of like this primitive, Africans, these was like very organized, medieval groups, and they actually like in some of the even some of they lances, because a lot of had a lot of common tradition of lancers and horsemen in all through the Sahel, from the Mali Empire, to all the way to the Songhai Empire, and even they lances was poison tips, with iron. So yeah, so just a little bit more light on that.
No, I appreciate that. And I just wanted to go back to something that I Am King Sosa said. You said Pan-Africans kind of downplay it. I don't know any. I mean, maybe it's some, I can't discount your experience, but I don't know any. I feel like a lot of the ones that I know have the conversation, you know what I mean, about what transpired during that specific, time period, in our history. So, and but you're entitled to feel the way you feel. All right, y'all. So I do feel the system. We're getting ready to close out. Brother Ankh, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
I appreciate the conversation. I just think we can have facts, but the facts need to be organized properly. There need to be a chronology. That you need to understand that human behavior is fluid. You can start off one way. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do this. Some type of thing occurs in your family, and now you're doing that. Some type of hardship. Your mother might be dying from something, and then I need to get into the game. But if the game ain't there for you to get in, then you never get in the game. That's the point I keep saying. So I'm never taking the initial responsibility out of the hands of the Portuguese that came in there with intentions of doing just what they end up doing. It ended up just like they planned it. So I'm never taking that responsibility out of that. Now we can talk about the responses later.
No, absolutely.
That's just for me.
I Am Soka. What you thinking, King? What you thinking, Warrior?
I mean, good, Bill. I came in at the end of it. Like I said, I've had this conversation quite a bit. I'm passionate about it because some of my people ended here as a result of it. So I made it a purpose of mine to understand it. Because like I said, because I feel like I'm invested in it being I'm African American. So So I think it's a good conversation. I think with every conversation, people learn a little bit more about slavery and West African slavery. Like it's not something that you're going to learn just in passing. It takes, you got to study it. It takes time. Like you're not gonna learn everything you need to know from the show. So into it, pick up the books. There's many journals on it. Read the journals, and then just get a good understanding of it. That's all I gotta say. Good show.
No, absolutely, man. And I appreciate the conversation, and I think what I got out of this discussion tonight, and I'm gonna be honest, I'm not being funny when I say this. A lot of our people don't really know, our story. Because even when I was asking Trevor certain questions, are you familiar that, it started with kidnapping? First he said, well, nobody went inside. They didn't go inland, and they didn't go inland. They didn't go in the main. They didn't do that. They stayed on the coast. And I'm like, that is not true. The Portuguese themselves said that they did, you know what I mean? And I just think that, I don't think any of us will know everything, right? About the story. We won't know. We're all still learning. But I just feel like jump into the conversation when you've done some reading. You know what I mean? It's like people want to jump in and make claims and have conversations, and you haven't even read the literature. You know what I mean? Read the literature and then come back and have the conversation. You understand what I'm saying? It's like we get online and we start Googling things and watch videos, and then we want to jump into the conversation. I think what I walked away tonight with is just, I think people need to do their due diligence more. You know what I mean? You want to debate and you haven't really studied, like you're uninformed and you want to jump out there and debate. Go study and then join the discussion, and then, formulate your ideas. And then if you want to debate or you want to intellectually spar, go ahead. I think I also took away from this conversation that a lot of our people are struggling with reading comprehension and listening comprehension. That's a really, really big issue. And I'm saying in our community, and I'm speaking about our community because I'm in the community. And I notice that when I engage children, teenagers, young adults, it's the comprehension is terrible. And I just didn't know, and this is my third point, and I'll close. I just didn't know how bad it was on social media. You know what I mean? It's bad out here, man. When I see certain things on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and some of the things that people believe, some of the things that people say, I just keep thinking to myself, as an educator, we have a lot of work to do. You know what I mean? Like it's a lot of work that needs to be done. So anyway, I do appreciate you. I am King Sosa and brother Orlando and brother Unc, and even the sister Constance in her absence, and even the two brothers Trevor and third party for hopping on tonight. Family, before you get out of here, please make sure that you thumb up the video, thumb it up, thumb it up, thumb it up. Also, family, make sure that you share this video, share it, share the video. We want to each one teach one. And lastly, family, subscribe to my YouTube channel, hit the notification bell so that whenever I go live, you will be notified. And join me back here next Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Peace and Black excellence.